Hello there, Shortcuts. Stephen here with the first list for your weekly delectation. This is a nothing over $40 list. So lots of great records here at $40 or less, covering all sorts of genres with some stellar bargains right here. This price list, this $40 or less price list, will go out at 9 p.m. Sydney time. If you would like to be on the price list, drop me an email, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. As a reminder, I have my first record fair. It's on Sunday, March 16th at the Hotel Staying in Manly, and it starts at 11. And there'll be a bunch of freebies and some great stuff for you to flick through. Okay, so my first $40 or less list for a long time, and there's a lot here, so I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. It was really hard to decide on the kickoff record, but I had to go with this. Otis Redding's The Dock of the Bay. I mean, what a tragedy. Dies in a plane crash, 1967, just 26 years of age. This record was released posthumously, not long after he died, and was the first soul record to go to number one in the Billboard 200 in the US, which is the reason I think it had to be my kickoff record. I know a lot of you out there have this record already, but why is it so great? Well, I think part of the reason is obviously the tragedy of the story, the iconic title track, but also the production by Mr. Steve Cropper, the guitarist from Booker T and the MGs. He really shaped these raw recordings into something that is really emotional and involving. I love the sleeve as well. It's just great. And so a wildly brilliant album. And in fact, the first two records are somewhat similar, although this second record is not as famous as Dock of the Bay, but I think it's just as good. This is You Got My Mind Messed Up by Mr. James Carr. Now, this is a really early Japanese press, and it is on mono wax on the rather unusual gold wax label. I've been a huge fan of James Carr for a really long time. Such a tragic story in a similar way to Otis Redding. What impacted James Carr's career was his battle with mental health. He was probably bipolar, certainly had suffered from depression. This sleeve is, I think, kind of prescient of the struggles that he had. James Carr, You Got My Mind Messed Up, produced by Quentin Clonch and Rudolph Russell. I love this album. It's got so many great songs, and even the track titles. Let me explain. Track 1, Pouring Water on a Drowning Man. It is unquestionably one of my favorite opening tracks ever. It is so affecting. I love it. There's references to water all the way through this record. These Ain't Raindrops is another really good example. The opening track on side 2 is this record's equivalent of The Dock of the Bay. It is called The Dark End of the Street. It is one of the greatest soul recordings ever. It is absolutely amazing. So I think part of the reason this record isn't as lauded is it wasn't recorded on the Stax label. If this record had been on the Stax label, had their promotional qualities, had their kudos, I genuinely think it would be one of the greatest soul records of all time. But it was recorded in Memphis. It was on gold wax. It wasn't Stax. He really struggled in the recording of this. And I think that makes it even more poignant. I love this album. If you don't know it, please give it a listen. All right. Now for something very different. The $40 or less. How about this? The Japanese first press with Obi of Bryan Adams' Reckless. What a commercial beast this album was. How many singles? I don't know. I can't even think. Run to You, Heaven, Summer of 69, It's Only Love, the duet he did with Tina Turner. It's got to be one of the most commercially successful albums of the 80s and turned Bryan Adams into a total megastar. Lots of Grammy nominations, etc., etc. Probably his peak. Maybe his peak. Maybe that number one song he had for donkey's years is probably his peak as well. I always remember reading about how they almost scrapped Summer of 69 from the album because, quote, it was a bit lightweight compared to the rest. This always makes me laugh. But that Japanese first press is highly sought after and in perfect condition. All right, let's continue with the $40 or less. What did I have next? I had this. This is steadily making its way up my list of my favorite Rolling Stones albums. This is Goat's Head Soup, follow-up to Exile Main Street. This is the druggy, psychedelic, weird album that in fact informed a lot of their later 70s work. It includes the Goat's Head Soup poster, which is fantastic. Originally mixed in Jamaica, has a few more international references, has the controversial Star Star song. You know what I'm talking about, if you know what I mean. Almost meant the album wasn't released. This is an introspective Stones classic. Has Angie on it. The recording process was a challenge. Jimmy Miller, as the producer, was pretty heroined up during the whole process, and you can kind of tell. But it works. All right, what else? $40 or less. How about this? The best of James Brown. James Brown's greatest hits. This is with the Flames, and it's got kind of the whole Japanese inner thing going on. On here, you've got Think, Suds, Ain't That a Groove, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, It's a Man's World, Cross-Firing. Typical, really lovely Japanese James Brown compilation. I think that one's going to be 35. What about this? This is a really cool album. I can't believe this is in my $40 or less list. The Japanese first press of Living My Life by Grace Jones, 1982. She is an icon. Androgyny, fashion, avant-garde looks, acting, producing, songwriting, singing. This record is typically genre-defying. You've got reggae, you've got post-punk, new wave, definitely pop. It's like all of her records in the 80s, especially this run of 3 that she had. What were they called? She had a name for them. I'm trying to remember. The Compass Point Trilogy, that's what it was called, with Warm Leatherette and my favorite of the 3, Night Clubbing. But this one is really cool. Look at that sleeve. Look at the little... I mean, she was a legend. Sampled by Beyonce, by LL Cool J. Just a really cool record. Yeah, $40 or less, Japanese first press. All right, I've got a run of great blues records, $40 or less. What about Black Magic by the Magic Sam blues band on the legendary Delmark label. This is the most fiery mix of blues and R&B. Probably one of my favorite cover versions of I Just Want a Little Bit. Really raw production. Another tragic story. Magic Sam also passed away shortly after he recorded this album, and he never got to tour it, so he never got to hear these tracks, which makes it even more poignant. Black Magic, the Magic Sam Blues Band. What a guitarist he was. And by the way, his singing voice is stellar. Absolutely superb. One of Chicago's greatest guitarists and singers. His previous album to this, West Side Blues, is well worth grabbing as well. He was only 32 when he passed away. What about this? This one's a good one. Otis Rush, another Chicago blues legend, this time on the Epic label. On this record is, and by the way, this is still in the shrink wrap. It is in pristine condition. Double Trouble, I Can't Quit You Babe, which became effectively a Led Zeppelin song. They covered it, didn't credit him. Groaning the Blues, Violent Love, She's a Good One. It's all there. I love it. In the shrink wrap, in fantastic condition. Thanks to Blues Limited. Otis Rush. $40 or less. Okay, this is quite hard to find. This is the UK press of No Friend Around by John Lee Hooker. This is kind of some of his really raw blues. So you've got Stomp Boogie, Black Man Blues, Helpless Blues, Going Mad Blues, No Friend Around, the title track, Lowdown Midnight Boogie, Wandering Blues, Landing Blues. This is as raw as John Lee Hooker got, and it's a UK press. I can't quite find the year or the details, but it's in immaculate condition. The listening notes on the back of this describe how this is an exemplar of a classic era in blues. This album is a testament to that era and to one of its greatest stars, John Lee Hooker. Really hard to find and pretty great. Now, this is probably my favorite blues album on the list, and there's a lot of great ones. This is Country Blues by Lightnin' Hopkins. Early Japanese press with the inner effectively on the back sleeve. This one's on the Columbia label, albeit it's a rare kind of red variant. I think it may even be, I'll have to look it up, I think it may even be a promo. But Country Blues by Lightnin' Hopkins, another kind of late 50s, I think this one's 59 or 60, recorded, single take, straight to tape, really authentic sound. But what makes it stand out is its acoustic blues. And so this influenced Townes Van Zandt, influenced the Black Keys. Just it's so beautiful. I've got a copy on my shelf, and it's, whilst it's acoustic blues, it's really creative, and he is an amazing player. And there's a couple of times on this where he just clearly improvises songs on the spot, which is pretty legendary. Okay, some more blues. This is Burglar by Freddie King. One of the King trilogy, Albert King, B.B. King, and Freddie King. Freddie King's probably the best singer of those three, by the way. But the guitar playing sounds are very different. B.B. King played Lucille, which had this ringing, very pure tone. Albert King played in an almost rock style, which is why he's so influential on some of the rock players like Eddie Van Halen and others. Freddie King was all about blues purity. And what's really interesting about this record is it was produced by Eric Clapton, and sounds way better than any Eric Clapton album. So it's kind of a bit of a strange one, but it's right up there, top tier blues. Freddie King's Burglar. I think maybe the best of the Electric Blues albums tonight. I don't think it's quite as good as the Lightning Hopkins, but I do like it a lot. Now, $40 or less for the Japanese first press of Bob Marley and the Wailers. One of the greatest reggae live albums, if not one of the great live albums. The crowd noise through this record is what makes it particularly electric. Obviously, the version of No Woman, No Cry is iconic. It's just one of those records that's developed its own mythology, and why not? It's fantastic. It cemented Marley internationally, became one of his biggest hits, and why not? It's great. All right, only a few to go. $40 or less, the Japanese first press of the Jams, The Gift. I just have to say, A Town Called Malice. I mean, one of the greatest singles of the 80s, 1982. Their final album, a real shift towards funk and soul, which became Paul Weller's thing with the Style Council. A very collectible and fun record to listen to. The bass playing, particularly magnificent. Talking about final albums, the final ABBA album until the one they released a few years back, I guess. They made the final classic era ABBA album. This is Super Trooper. Now, this was the one that my mum played. She had all the singles from this particular album. I don't know whether it's... I don't know... The album's a bit of a strange one in that it's a lot more mature sounding than you might think for such an iconic pop band. But I suppose when you think about what they were going through, you know, they weren't a million miles away from what Fleetwood Mac were doing at Rumours with Rumours, you know. Various people having affairs with various other people and splitting up and not splitting up and doing all sorts. I do really like these Japanese ABBA presses, and the feedback I've got on them is that they sound pretty great. So what else is on this? Super Trooper, the winner takes it all, of course. On and on and on. All right, well, it's probably going to be around $30, that one. I have the Police, Zenyatta Mandata. I don't know what you would... Let's see. I didn't get any date on this one, but this one is... I think it's the first press, pretty sure. In fantastic condition. Of course. What else was on this one? Don't Stand So Close to Me. Just that little song. So, typical Police, stellar sounding Japanese press. I always grab this when I see it. This is Ennio Morricone. Interesting, on one side is the soundtrack to Fistful of Dollars, and on the other side is the soundtrack to For a Few Dollars More. Both Sergio Leone classic westerns scored by Ennio Morricone. I know a few of you have bought this, and I've had rave reports, so here it is again on the Victor label. $40 or less. And then finally, an early UK press of This Is the Sea by the Waterboys. The birth of the big sound. Includes, of course, The Hole of the Moon, which was by a mile their biggest hit, but is also has many tracks that have a big, huge cinematic sound. And kind of a hidden gem for those of us who like poetic, expansive rock. I love it. This is a great list. Every one of those is $40 or less, and they're all in immaculate condition. If you would like to be on the mailing list, drop me an email, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Price list will go out this Wednesday, 9 p.m. Sydney time. Thank you. Bye.